The moment my boss walked through the restaurant doors, the smile disappeared from his face, and the glass in my hand nearly slipped onto the table. He stared at me as if he had just seen someone who was never supposed to be there. Across from me sat my friend's sister, Hannah, looking equally confused. Neither of us knew that the dinner meant to be a simple blind date was about to uncover a secret that could change all three of our lives. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances can change people's lives, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories. My name is Caleb, and for the past 6 years, my life had revolved around work. I had moved to Seattle after college with one suitcase, a borrowed car, and a determination to build something for myself. I worked for a respected architectural firm, owned by a demanding but brilliant man named Gregory. He had taught me almost everything I knew about business, but he rarely showed emotion. To most employees, Gregory was intimidating. To me, he was simply the boss who had given me a chance when nobody else would. My best friend, Nathan, believed I had forgotten how to live. One Friday evening, he told me he had arranged dinner with his sister Hannah. I tried every excuse I could think of, but Nathan refused to listen. He insisted Hannah was kind, intelligent, and tired of meeting people who only cared about appearances. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I arrived at the waterfront restaurant, I expected an awkward evening. Instead, Hannah surprised me. She was warm without being overly familiar, confident without needing attention, and she laughed at my terrible jokes as though they were actually funny. She told me she worked with a community organization that helped families rebuild their lives after financial hardships. As she spoke, I realized she cared deeply about people who had been forgotten by everyone else. We talked for nearly an hour before I noticed something unusual. Hannah kept glancing toward the restaurant entrance. When I asked if she was expecting someone, she smiled nervously and said she had a feeling someone might show up. Then the doors opened. Gregory walked inside. He stopped so suddenly that the couple behind him nearly bumped into him. His eyes moved from Hannah to me, and the color seemed to drain from his face. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Gregory quietly approached our table and looked at Hannah with an expression I had never seen on him before. Something between shock, regret, and heartbreak. I stood immediately, thinking I had somehow made a terrible mistake. But Gregory wasn't angry with me. He was looking at Hannah as though she had stepped out of a memory he had spent years trying to bury. Hannah finally whispered that Gregory was her father. The truth that followed was far more painful than I expected. Gregory had walked away from his family years earlier after a devastating business failure. He had convinced himself that leaving would protect them from his problems. Hannah, however, had spent years believing her father had simply chosen work and pride over his family. She had stopped waiting for him to come home. Gregory had secretly followed Hannah's community work for months. He knew she was helping struggling families because, in his words, she had inherited the part of him he had almost destroyed. But he had been too ashamed to approach her. That night, sitting across from his daughter, Gregory finally admitted that his greatest mistake wasn't losing his company years ago. It was believing that providing money could replace being present. Hannah didn't forgive him immediately. She told him forgiveness wasn't something she could hand over in one conversation. But she also said she was tired of carrying anger that had become heavier than the sadness itself. Something changed in Gregory after that night. At work, he began listening more. He created a small fund for employees facing financial hardship and quietly supported Hannah's organization. He never tried to buy his way back into his daughter's life. Instead, he showed up. He attended community meetings, helped prepare food drives, and sat beside Hannah, even when she barely spoke to him. Months passed before Hannah finally called him Dad again. As for me, the dinner Nathan had planned as a joke became the beginning of something unexpected. Hannah and I continued seeing each other, but our relationship grew slowly, built on friendship, honesty, and the understanding that love isn't about finding someone without wounds. It's about finding someone willing to heal honestly. One rainy evening, Gregory called me into his office. I expected another work assignment, but instead he thanked me for staying at that dinner. He said that if I had walked away when things became uncomfortable, he might never have found the courage to face his daughter. I told him I hadn't done anything extraordinary. I had simply stayed. Sometimes, that's all kindness asks of us. If this story touched something inside your heart, please support it with a like, share it with someone who believes people can change, and subscribe so we can keep telling stories about hope, forgiveness, and second chances. And before you go, leave a comment telling us this. Do you believe forgiveness should be given immediately, or should someone have to earn it through their actions? Your answer might give hope to someone silently struggling with a broken relationship. Years later, Nathan still teased me about the blind date that changed everything. But whenever I saw Hannah sitting beside her father at a community dinner, I understood that the real gift that evening wasn't romance. It was reconciliation. Two people who had spent years believing they were too far apart finally discovered that the door between them had never been completely closed. And sometimes, the most beautiful second chance begins when someone simply finds the courage to walk through it.